This from Theo on email. With Kylian Mbappé and Jude Bellingham both scoring against Manchester City and Vinicius providing a crucial assist too, is Real Madrid's star-studded front line finally proving its worth?
I think so. It was always going to take time, I think, to slot everybody in, for everybody to find a role. I think Mbappé particularly is looking a lot more comfortable. I think there was a stage of the season when he was just being derided for the one. I think that game against Liverpool at Anfield was a real eye opener. It was like, whoa! He looked like a shadow of himself. The confidence was lacking. He didn't seem to have clarity over his role as well. But now he looks a lot more comfortable. Like he's taken on board what it means to be at Real Madrid, what it means to be the main face at Real Madrid, or one of the main faces. So it does. It looks very, very promising for Real Madrid.
I've not thought about that Kylian Mbappé performance at Anfield for quite a while. I mean, that was such a low, wasn't it? Do you think it says a lot about how the club and Ancelotti have looked after him since to get him in the position that he's in now?
They weren't reactionary. I think a lot of the noise around the club from fans, from onlookers, from watchers of football was reactionary. I don't think Real Madrid were that way, and they never usually are, to be honest with you, these days. They will, usher in precaution over certain players who aren't performing well and give them a platform to get better and perform. They did that with Mbappé. They knew he would come good at some point. He's too good, basically, to not. And now he's looking really, really settled. The contrast to this is, I'm a bit concerned about Jude Bellingham in places, I think, in how his role is working within the team. I think, again, he's capable of doing everything, but that doesn't mean he has to do everything. And I think sometimes he can get beset by that, and it leaves him at odds with that front line at times. And I think there needs to be a better understanding of what his role, and that's the next thing that I want to see grow. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this is hanging over Real Madrid at the moment, is the Vinicius Junior contract renewal. What he ends up getting, what he's demanding, is going to be interesting in comparison with Mbappé, and to see how that affects the dynamic in the dressing room, affects the egos there.
Well, because he's taken a hit to join Real Madrid, Mbappé, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Which
I think is notable. And if Vinicius ends up getting paid more than him, I think that's politically quite difficult. I think the other question is, because it's never really about the money, is it, Don? It's about the respect that it conveys at that level.
Yep.
It's like, say, if we go back to 2004, it's why Patrick Vieira didn't join Real Madrid, for example, because they said to him, look, you're not a shirt seller, therefore we can only pay you this amount. But I think the interesting thing is, if you look at how it fits together on the pitch as well, I mean, there is a sense of gentle progress. And it feels to me like Mbappé and Bellingham click really well at certain points, that Mbappé and Vinicius click together at certain points. It doesn't feel to me like the three of them click together brilliantly yet. I wonder, David, with this contract renewal on the horizon, with the Saudi bogeyman in the background, is there an argument, or is there a foreseeable scenario where Real Madrid think, should we just sell Vinicius?
I've believed it for quite some time.
Really?
Yeah, I honestly really have. I think, and this is going to sound crazy considering where he placed that in the Ballon d'Or and how good he has been, I don't think Vinny has got as much leverage as he used to have. Mbappé is there. Bellingham is there. Rodrigo, again, I'll speak, so many good things of him, is there.
He's always looked like being the odd man out, but wouldn't it be interesting if he wasn't?
Exactly. You got Endrick around as well. I don't think anyone in Europe can buy Vinny. Everybody would say PSG, but they're Fatch now, so they're settled and they're moving away from the superstars model, apparently. So Saudi looks like his only option if he does decide to leave, if everything does go wrong with these contract discussions. And it would not surprise me if Real Madrid looked at it and look at the outlay that they've put on wages and transfer fees for certain players, that they go, oh, well, we can move on from this.
Yeah, well, we'll watch that space, but it is quite something that even to the level that the Real Madrid front three are, it's not perfect, as you say, Andy, but nevertheless, the level at which they're being effective at the moment, it's the right time, isn't it, for them to kick into gear ahead of the Champions League final stages.
Although I do think if we're talking about them winning the Champions League, if they can get it right defensively, that will make it possible for them to win the Champions League.
Yeah, 100%.
This question from Peter on Blue Sky. I've just finished watching Andy's brilliant video on the OTC YouTube channel about Adana Demirspor walking off the pitch against Galatasaray. Yeah, this was a controversial event. Just remind us, why did they walk off the pitch?
Yeah, so it was half an hour into the game on Sunday, and it was 1-0 to Galatasaray at the time, which had been scored by Alvaro Morata from the penalty spot, a penalty that shouldn't have been given for a semi-foul on Mertens, which wasn't really. It was one of those ones where Semi stuck his leg out, Dries Mertens saw it, dragged his back leg across his leg, and it was, quite a convincing dive, but a dive nevertheless. VAR probably should have sorted it out and didn't. But yeah, that came and went. Galatasaray continued battering them. And 20 minutes later, Adana Demirspor decided to go off the pitch. Now, they said it was a protest against the refereeing structure and process in Turkey, not against Galatasaray. But
the question, though, from Peter is, what actions do you think should be taken to restore trust in the Turkish FA and refereeing boards? Well,
as I said in the video, trust is completely broken. I mean, we've had this. If we go back a year and a half, remember Farouk Koca, the then president of Ankaragücü, attacking the referee, coming in, smashing him in the face on the pitch. And then there was a sense of, we can't carry on like this.
It was shocking.
It was shocking. And everyone felt terrible about it for 2 weeks, and then they started complaining about referees again. And when Farouk Koca got put in prison, Ankaragücü had the nerve to complain about it and said, this is terrible, we've been discriminated against. I mean, he literally, in front of the whole world, walked onto the pitch and punched the referee. And so there was just such... I think that the lack of trust is so endemic that even something as shocking as this just disappears like this. You've had two walk-offs as well. Of course, Istanbulspor walked off against Trabzonspor last season as well. So something has to change. Clubs see it from a very partisan perspective, be it Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, Adana Demirspor, or whoever else, really. They've tried to change things by they've had overseas VAR officials. As I said on the video, the complaint has been that those VAR officials were from Poland, or in this case Denmark, rather than England or Germany. But I guess it's always that thing, isn't it, David, about people think the grass is greener on the other side. If you look at other European countries, there's always that sense of England's this gold standard of refereeing, whereas actually people who watch the Premier League regularly don't feel like that at all. So it feels to me that there needs to be more reasonable discourse rather than... There is no perfect solution, and the sooner you can accept that, the better.
Do you think, just in regards to the Turkish situation, I know you said it's quite partisan and what have you, would you say there's any extra feeling towards decisions benefiting, say, Galatasaray than there are the other teams?
Well, I think there is, and I think...
That was something kind of energised by Mourinho.
Yeah. I think he's been a massively negative influence.
That was going to be another question I had. So.
in those terms. And the thing is, what Mourinho has done is he's made this not just a national issue, but an international issue. Because if a penalty's given that, say, to Galatasaray, for example, and Fenerbahce sound off about it, if Mourinho's not there, no one outside the Turkish Super League really cares. Whereas if it's Mourinho going off on one in a press conference about it, then it's something else. Now, you might say, Mourinho is not a serial winner anymore. Why did Fenerbahce bring him in to... I'm not going all conspiracy theory. I think this is very logical, actually.
I like this. I know where this is going.
I think they brought him in to replace a coach who got 99 points in the league last season. Mourinho going to get those many points? Nope. Is he going to win the league? Well, despite a really heavy investment in January, maybe not. It's going to be difficult for them. Galatasaray still haven't lost a league game. And of course, Mourinho suggests that's nothing to do with him playing better or anything like that, but he would. Why have they really brought him in? Have they brought him in so they can get word out about what they feel about the current standard of officiating in the world? And I think whenever you've got that sort of confrontational approach to solving a problem, and it's not just Fenerbahce, it's all the other clubs as well who have such a one-eyed view of things, it's really impossible to find a solution in this situation. Now, of course, in terms of how the TFF, the Turkish Federation, operates, I think it's clear that there's an appetite for more voices and more candidates in elections. And I think if there was greater transparency, that would at least make an inch towards some sort of trust. But the clubs can't say it's all down to the FA or it's all down to the referees. You've got to take your own responsibility as well. They gaslight each other and fans week after week after week. So they have to take their responsibility.
How do the fans, I'm sorry, David, I know you want to come in. How do the fans react to it? Not least when a team walks off the pitch, whether you're a supporter of that team or a supporter of the opposition team. How do they take it?
Well, often in a very partisan way. Of course, when you had that walk-off, you had Adana Demirspor saying, it's a refereeing conspiracy, essentially. You have Fenerbahce going, well, this is Galatasaray getting decisions for them, as they always do. You have Galatasaray backers saying, well, look, we think this penalty's been given against us just to make us look bad, to beef up the conspiracy against us. So, everyone looks at it just from their view. There's no real will to improve standards. So you had the vice president of Fenerbahce and the guy who owns Hull City this week on TalkSport, Acun Ilicali, and he spoke about, well, maybe we could get referee assessors from abroad to make a difference. And of course, you've had that in North America. You've had that in Saudi. Clattenburg worked out there for a while, didn't he? But I think it's so difficult in such an environment of mania to operate apart from the pressure. So I kind of like the idea of someone coming in and rather than refereeing the games or re-refereeing the games, giving an overview of the process, maybe that would get us closer to some sort of clarity on what's actually happening. Because at the moment, all the people who are in it just can't see the wood for the trees.
This question from Thomas by email: how is Antony getting on at Real Betis? It sounds like he's having a lovely time.
He is. He's having a lovely time because he's not in Manchester. He's in sunny Seville. But on the pitch,
said like Nolito there.
But I was going to say, I felt like my daughter lived in a cave. I believe was the quote from him. But yes, very well. 2 games, 2 man of the match awards, a goal, an assist, endearing himself to the fans very well. I think for all of the criticism and the deriding of Antony when he was in England about his quality, about his end product and what he does on the ball, I think something that you could never criticise him for is his desire and work ethic. I think he always showed a willingness to try and improve, and even if it failed, I always thought he tried very, very hard. He looked like he wanted to change things. He looked like he wanted to be a better player. He wanted Man United to be better. The Betis fans have got that same vibe from him with Betis as well, and they're kind of like, right, this guy really puts a shift in. This guy really tries hard. If his cross fails to go in, he's flinging his arms like at himself, not at his teammates, and he's just like, I want to be better. So that's got across to the fans. He was at the Betis youth team, or in the UEFA Youth League as well. He was at that game the other day with the hierarchy as well, just watching the youth teams. There was a really nice video of him going into Betis' club shop. He probably could ask somebody at the club to go and sort him some shirts. He was in there buying them himself. He was saying, "Oh, these are for all my family." So the little details, little things like that, he's really endearing himself. So it's all positive so far, and even to the extent that, Betis' sporting director was speaking the other day and said they're already, it's something they're looking at in keeping him stay. They want him to stay, and this is only after a couple of games, so it's all positive, absolutely.
I know he's not of the same quality, David, but do you think they've needed someone to replace Nabil Fekir in the hearts of the fans?
I think they needed something like that. Yeah, definitely, just a bit of inspiration, a little bit of live. They did very well at I nearly said the trade deadline. I'm so obsessed with NBA. Right, they did very well at the end of the transfer window, bringing in Cucho Hernandez and then Antony as well. I think that's talk about an injection, a bit of an impetus into your team. Then those two players will provide it. So yeah, definitely, I think they miss Fekir a lot. Again, he was another really just very well loved player. It made himself endearing to fans.
I'm sorry for derailing this, but you talked about the NBA trade deadline there. Of course, a few people have asked me in the last week, I'm putting in my own question, a few people have asked me in the last week, there was that huge trade in the NBA with Luka Doncic going to the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis, who went back to the Mavericks. And people who aren't into NBA have said, how would you explain this in football terms? Now, I said it would be like if you had trading in football, like player for player, it would be like if Jude Bellingham went to Bayern Munich in exchange for Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think that makes kind of sense. Yeah, I think that makes kind of sense. The type of players, definitely.
Age difference.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense for me. I think I was thinking maybe Florian Wirtz going to Bayern for Kane.
Oh, okay.
So something like that. Because
okay.
Yeah, I would think like that.
Yeah, and sorry to bring it back to football. Thanks for the derailment.
We just mentioned 4 footballers. What do you want?
Yeah, sure. What was I going to say now? Thank you. I've totally forgotten now. I was wondering whether you think it's that drop in level of football, no disrespect, between the Premier League maybe and, well, at least Manchester United and Real Betis, let me put it that way, that has made the difference for Antony.
It's an interesting one. I just think environment is important. I think he's out of the glare. I think the glare at Manchester United is so intense. It's absurd. It really is right now. I just think it's not to do with level. I really do think it's to do with environment. We've seen down the years some people who flopped in the Premier League go and succeed in other leagues, and everybody's like, "Oh, right, he's found his level." But then I think you do see some cases of vice versa as well, of players who are perhaps okay, decent in European leagues, who then go to the Premier League and turn into a really special player. So it's an interesting one.
I mean, there's 2 other things with that. I mean, I think the 2 things that really hang over Antony is he was sold for about 4 times what he was worth, which creates a pressure. You can say, okay, the club can afford it, but it creates a pressure on the player that's very difficult to scrub off. And I think the other thing is, how many players go to Man United and get better?
It's a good question.
I mean, that's the problem, really, and has been the problem in recent years.
And also, the coach that bought him is no longer there. He's not going to get much better if the new coach doesn't see what the point of paying him or paying all that money for him was. But this question from Gianluca on Instagram: why just 7 weeks after sacking him have the Berlusconis reappointed Alessandro Nesta at Monza?
Well, Italian clubs are kind of trailblazers in this. I think people look at it from the outside and go, Italian clubs are always reappointing coaches who they've sacked. You look at it at other clubs like Palermo, Genoa, etc., etc. It makes a financial sense that I think the rest of Europe kind of understands a little bit more now. I mean, it's something that culturally still feels a bit weird, but realistically, we think of coaches being fired and then being paid a settlement amount and off they go into the sunset. But it's almost always a sort of gardening leave now. You look at, say, Graham Potter at Chelsea, various Mauricio Pochettino situations, in that you are paid until you get a new job. So if that person's on the payroll as already, why wouldn't you bring them back? It's the ultimate cost-cutting measure. So I think not only is this not particularly unusual in an Italian sense, but also I think you have to look at where Monza are. Of course, still owned by the Berlusconi family, despite the passing of Silvio. His son, who's now the owner of the club, doesn't want it. He wants to sell it. And when people want to sell an asset, they normally don't want to invest anything in it. It's a bit of a risk because, of course, your asset won't be as valuable if it's in the second division as opposed to the top division. But you look at what they did in the January window. You look at Judicic went, Daniel Maldini went, of course, to Atalanta. Warren Bondo went to Milan. I think they've completely lost hope of staying up. I mean, they're 8 points from safety. They've won 2 games all season. Firing Nesta didn't make a massive difference. They won that one game against Fiorentina, but they've lost all the rest.
Six and 7? So he's had 7 games, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
does seem like something of...
I remember you touched on Palermo there. I seem to remember Zamperini, he sacked Gasperini twice in the same season.
Yes.
Correct. So
yes.
That's still possible. Yeah. Right. I'll just put it out there. Just say, okay.
Well, if they're down in April, he'll get fired again, won't he? I mean,
yeah.
It's not even a question, is it?
Okay. In the same season, it needs to be like right in the season.
Yeah. Don't bother signing on for a new apartment. Get an Airbnb.
This question from Rowley on Instagram. After Mateo Retegui bagged 4 goals against Hellas Verona, bringing his league total up to 20, can we now put him in the elite striker category, or does he have to move clubs to be considered elite?
He's having an amazing season. There's no doubt about it. I didn't think Retegui had it in him. I mean, he's taken such an atypical path to a good level in European football. Now, bear in mind, he's Argentinian born and raised. Came to European attention because Roberto Mancini picked him for the Italy team on the back of his Italian grandmother, which might have been Mancini making a point about the lack of Italian-born strikers available to him. I'm sure Mancini wouldn't be that petty, obviously. And then that got him a move to Genoa. And, he was good at Genoa. But, sometimes when you see a player and you just realise pretty quickly that they're going to be much better with better players around him. That has been the thing with Retegui. Playing for Atalanta has made him, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's come out of his shell. You can see the confidence and it's a bit of like arrogance he plays with now. He's like unbelievably hard-working player, of course. And he's always worked hard, but now he has that, a bit extra confidence. So he's doing things that he perhaps wouldn't have normally done before. And yeah, I really do adore him. And I said before, while we were discussing it, he's just got a bit of a scampish sort of rascal quality to him. And I love these players like that because he isn't all smoothly, made as a player or as a person, and that's what I really like about him. He's good. He's a real character, I think. As
unorthodox.
Yeah, very, very, very unorthodox. Yeah.
Anyone you compare him to? Come si dice Red Bull and Skittles in Italiano.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the little Vardy. Yeah, Atlanta's got their own little Vardy.
Yeah,
I think the interesting thing about him, to go back to Rowley's question, is, in terms of him being in the elite striker category, I don't think it's about changing clubs. He's just not been at that level for long enough for us to say whether this is a purple patch season.
Yeah.
And he's not even completed the whole season there yet. Or, is he genuinely top level? I think we need a few more seasons to tell. I don't think he does need to move to a higher up club. And I think what's really interesting, especially in a modern context, is the way that Gasperini's used him. Now, he's got 20 league goals out of him, which is amazing. Of course, Champions League goals as well. But he's taken quite brave decisions, and Gasperini's very experienced. He's got the run of it at Atalanta, and he can do exactly what he likes. But he's taken quite brave decisions with him because, they paid a lot of money for him. And like for example, when they played away at Napoli, going back to autumn, he left him out. And you think, okay, hang on, that's interesting. And he brings on Retegui when they've got a little bit of pressure on him, despite the fact they're 2-0 up in the closing stages, and Retegui comes on and scores. He's done that a couple of times, like left him out of big games. And you have to ask, is that because Gasparini's all about the team, and he thinks it's about everyone playing their role at any given moment, and is that the modern way in football? Or is it that he thinks he's still building Retegui as an elite level striker? Now, whatever, I don't think he'll go anywhere this summer, and I think he needs to be there. He needs to continue learning how to be that elite level player. Absolutely.
And I think I still think he can get there, but to answer the question directly, I don't think he's in like the tier 1 of strikers, your Haaland, your Isak, people like this. I think he's like just below, but he can potentially get there, absolutely.
On another occasion, I'll ask you how you define elite in terms of strikers. On another occasion. Okay. Thank you for listening to this occasion of Ask OTC. If you'd like to ask a question, you can contact us at any time at Radio Dotun, at Andy Brassel, at David Jacka, or at OTC Pod, and you can email us, otc@footballramble.com.